Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lore Lords episode 19, The Missing 401 Part 2. I'm your host, Atlas. This is the other host, Pat.
Hello.
Yep, that's him right there.
Yeah, usually I have more to say.
Remember last time?
I do, because I kept yelling about how aliens are real and stuff.
Well, you might yell more this time.
Yeah.
You probably will, because last time was part 1 of The Missing 411. This is part 2 of Missing 411. So we're going to go, last time we went over 5 missing people's cases. This week we're going to go over 5 more missing people's cases. Some of them are a little shorter. Some of them are normal. It might be a little shorter overall, but there's a bit more to talk about, because I picked some ones I don't have necessarily as much information on the case.
Right.
But they have some more spooky kind of stuff. The last
More
5,
wild stuff.
yeah. The last 5 we went over were like what I call like blanket cases. And just to do a short little overview of last time, it was Cole Infinity, the quarterback who disappeared in Michigan in 2013.
Yep.
And then we had Bart Schlayer, who was a wildlife expert who would disappear in the Canadian Yukon wilderness in 2004. Remember, he was the skull that was found, the skull pieces.
Oh yeah, he was melted in acid by the Russian mafia.
Yeah, acid guy. They were both found dead. The quarterback was just found face down on the ground. Then we switched it to Brandon Swanson, who was the 19-year-old tech student who just disappeared after saying "oh shit" on the phone.
Right.
In Marshall, Minnesota. Who he's still never been found. And then we switched it to the 2-year-old Keith Parkins, who managed to travel 12 miles seemingly on his own overnight in the frozen wild wastes of Oregon before being found alive. Who I think is still alive today? That was 1952. I think he's still alive today. And then we ended the story with Stephen Kubacki, who was a skier who would disappear in Lake Michigan in 1979 and then reappear 15 months later at his dad's house, thinking he was just gone a day or so.
Yeah, that last one was probably the most wild. I mean, you said you were escalating them, so...
Yeah, it kind of went from more normal missing persons cases with some weird stuff to more interesting missing people's cases.
Right.
And I call them kind of like blanket cases because they're very, like, normal. Like, that's like, what, 90% of the missing 401 cases you'll see will be.
Right.
So they're still quite the mystery, but today's are going to be they're going to be mysterious and have a bit more of an interesting twist on them. But before we started going on them, I did want to go over some of the major connections between the missing 411 cases, including the ones from last time. But just kind of highlight them now. So you've heard some of them. Now we're going to talk about some of these connections that the author of the missing 411, David Paulides. I watched a video this week from him. He posts videos on YouTube like weekly, going over these cases, and sometimes he goes to the location of the cases, which is cool when he talks about them.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's Paulides. That's how you say his name. It's spelled like Paul Ides, so it's Paulides. That's how you say it, I guess.
Sounds Greek.
Yeah, it does. He's a Greek hero. So not all the cases follow this, but the majority do. The people who go missing are often very young, very disabled, or elderly. Now that sounds pretty reasonable, right, for people to go missing. These groups of people will be the most likely to wander off. Secondly, the connection is sudden bad weather, which we did talk about yesterday, or last week, about some of the cases where they couldn't search because the weather got bad, like immediately when they began searching.
Right.
Major cases, the majority of the cases, including ones we went over last week, definitely seemed to have like a weather move in right as the search begins, seemingly as if it was hampering them from looking for them. You know, a bit weird. The third and the weirdest to me is boulders. So we didn't talk about it as much last week. Again, with some of the cases, we just don't know because there was no contact with them. But a lot of the cases, people seem to go near boulders and then they're never seen again. Which we're going to go over some of those this week in the cases. But another important thing to note is the National Park Service themselves. And we talked a little bit about the National Park Service in the Skinwalker Wendigo episode. But often if you yourself, which you can do as an American citizen, you can contact the National Park Service and say, I would like information on the case of Cole Infinity who disappeared in one of your national parks. And they will just say no and hang up the phone.
Really?
Yes, they will just refuse to help you. And they just won't give out any details these cases. David Paulides talked about this a lot. He says he has to do almost all the research himself because they just won't give up any records on these missing people's cases. They will on some of the very
sketchy.
Yeah, they will on some of the very simple ones, but for these ones they just won't. The mysterious ones they never talk about. They're like, no, and they hang up the phone.
That's so fucking weird. That kind of stuff just implicates you immediately. Like, and there's so much of that goes on. I'm like, you're basically admitting it. That's a guilty move.
Yeah. The other thing is, there's no one above the National Park Service, so no one's checking them on this stuff. They're in complete control. There's no one to like make them reveal this. There's no one like making sure they're doing things all about. The Park Service is its own entity in the federal government, so they can kind of do what they want in their parks, and that's sketchy. But outside of that, some of the cases do get their full files released because the FBI gets involved. If that ever happens, the FBI releases their case files after, like, I think it's 35 years, and then classified cases get released after, like, I think it's like 70 years or something. Like Roswell just came out, you know what I mean? Like, you can go read all the Roswell files on their website, all scanned in and everything. They have to declassify their files eventually. And for some of the missing people's cases, I think the limit's 5 years. So a lot of these, they just get put out. Like, one of these cases tonight we're going to go over, I read the entire case file on the FBI's website. I read the entire case file on the National Park Service website because they have it as well. And it's just literally, you can tell someone's scanning almost like in a public library, like newspaper clippings that don't fit quite together. So, like, it's just, there's like lines in between it where you just see white as well. Like, it's just people scanning files.
Right.
But they're available. It's all public. You can look it up. I did. They usually are hard to read because they're actual old print newspapers. And, but if you want to get into that, you can.
That's cool.
So, yeah, that's just kind of a setup. So keep that in mind. Disabled, elderly, young, weather, and boulders as 5 things that kind of connect a lot of these cases together. So without further ado, let's go into our first case. And the first case of a missing person is Samuel, I don't know how to say this, Bohlke? Bohlke? Boehlke.
Is it some Swedish name or something?
Yeah, it's wild. But this Swedish person was an 8-year-old boy, and their case of missing happens in Cleetwood Cove, which is an area near Crater Lake National Park. And this happened in Oregon, 2006. Do you know what Crater Lake is? Ever been there?
Yeah, well, I haven't been there, but I know what Crater Lake is. Yeah, it's very pretty.
Yeah, very pretty lake, and it's a thing to know about the lake is that the water is very, very clean because it's not connected to any inlets or outlets. It's entirely snow and rainfall that makes Crater Lake exist. So it's a very pretty place.
Yeah, it was really neat.
Yeah. It's also very high up.
Yes.
This case is pretty short. And there's not a lot to talk about it. There's looking into this case, you can't find a lot of details. This is one of those cases the National Park Service won't even like talk about. They won't bring it up. They won't mention it. Nothing. It's just like it doesn't exist to them. But Samuel was a boy, and he went by Sammy. He was 8 years old, and he was slightly autistic. Not like majorly, like you wouldn't know probably. That's what from what I was reading, you would never really tell. But he had an extreme fear of loud noises and bright lights, which would trigger a response, which was deemed to be an autistic response, which would just cause panic, like immediate panic all over. He would hide, he would run, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But he was high functioning. And in 2006, Sammy and his father Kenneth went on a trip to Crater Lake in Oregon. And Sammy and his father were very close, like they were, inseparably close, which is, I feel like a good note to make about their relationship. So they were in an area called the Cinder Slopes, and this is an area of Crater Lake Park that faces away from the crater, which is important to note in this case. It does not face the lake. It's facing away from the lake, which is where they were. And it's basically, as it describes, a slope of cinder-like rocks, and there's a road going through it. And as they were I think they were walking, from what I can describe. I don't know why, but this is an actual road. Like if you there is the GPS coordinates online of where he went missing, and if you look at it on like Google Maps, you can like drop a little man there and look around. There's a major like 2-lane road going through it, but they were on foot, so I don't know why. But while they were walking, probably just hiking or something,
Maybe.
Sammy noticed a glowing yellow glint in the rock, and thinking he had found gold, he yelled towards it. He yelled and ran to the rock. Right. Sammy got excited thinking he had found it, and his father followed him, and Sammy decided that while his dad was following him and running around, it's a good time to play tag. So he tagged his dad and ran, and his father followed him, and they were doing that for a minute, but very soon a motorcycle drives by. Motorcycles are very loud.
Yes.
And this triggered Sammy's panic response. So Sammy ran up this cinder slope hill, and his dad was right behind him. The motorcycle stopped, apparently, because he saw the kid, and he was slowing down. So like he saw them and was stopping his bike. The kid runs up on top. Dad's right behind him. And he sees Sammy climb on top of a boulder on top of the hill. And Sammy looks down at his dad and steps off of the boulder, thinking they are probably still playing hide and seek. Kenneth approaches the boulder, and he jumped out the other side of. And this fall was couldn't have been more than like half a foot. This is like a big rock, right? It's not like a dangerous fall or anything. Kenneth went to the other side of the boulder, and sure enough, Sammy was gone and would never be seen again.
Oh wow! Like never ever again, huh?
No, Sammy's still missing, never seen again. So there was I think I should mention now, this bike guy did submit a witness report to this missing person's case, where he saw the dad go up the mountain or up the hill and saw Sammy on the rock, and said he couldn't have been more than 10 feet away from him.
Right.
Like he was right behind the kid. The kid jumps over. Dad looks around the corner. Kid's gone.
That's so wild.
Yeah, so Kenneth began calling out, trying desperately to look for some kind of pit or crevasse, but found nothing. And soon he had no other choice but to call emergency services, who would show up and begin their search. The first noted thing is there was no tracks, no marks, and no sign of movements in the bush or dirt around the boulder except for Kenneth. So they found the dad's footprints, but they did not find the kid's footprints anywhere.
That's weird.
The search party would begin canvassing the area of 6 square miles using dogs and searchers on foot. They also had multiple helicopters that were equipped with FLIR cameras, which if you don't know what that is, it's forward-looking infrared, so basically thermal vision, like heat vision. They could not find Sammy. The same night of the search, however, pretty much an hour or so after, they had to cut it short as, out of nowhere, not on the weather report, a massive snowstorm shows up. And this begins to cover the area in heavy snow, and they all had to pull back for their own safety. And they went to a lodge, and they waited till the next day. And that night, there would be over 2 feet of snow landing.
Well, that buries literally any evidence.
Yes, exactly. And the next day, the snow stopped, the search continued, but the snowfall was so bad up at the top of the area, they didn't even search it, and they started searching more towards the lake, which just means the area directly around the cinder slopes was never fully searched. No sightings of Sammy would ever be found, but multiple theories exist as to what could have happened to him. Of course, firstly, and most likely in my opinion, is death via exposure. Because 2 feet of snow falling on a massive night of storming is pretty easy for an 8-year-old boy alone in the woods to meet their fate, as well as most adults. So, that's 2 feet's a lot. That's a lot of snow. So
that's a lot of snow. We had that a couple times in Massachusetts as a kid, but not since I was a kid.
Yeah, that's a big storm front to do that.
That's a big storm.
And just overnight for 2 feet is insane. So that's a very high chance to freeze to death. Another possibility is he ran off and hit his head, knocking him unconscious and unable to respond. But my problem with that theory is there'd be tracks,
Right. I mean, dogs and then since they brought out dogs before the storm too, those dogs would have easily been able to find a body that was unconscious, likely close to the boulder still.
Yeah, exactly. Like again, this thing.
like-
The dad was. The guy said he was 10 feet behind the kid.
Yeah.
That's a couple steps. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a big
Oh
deal.
yeah, that's nothing. That's
Yeah.
literally nothing. Yeah.
Another theory is a wildlife encounter, which of course this is brought up in every single one of these cases. But again, there was no markings of bobcats or cougars immediately in the area, and even if a cougar did, it would have pretty much had to have been waiting for him. Like, he would have had to drop into the cougar's hands, and the cougar would have had to jump off so fast that the dad wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this brings some doubt into the theory of him running away, obviously.
Yeah.
He would have had to run so fast and quietly, making no disturbances in the brush, and to stop behind something and hide from his father and then not respond at all. An important note to this is, again, I'm just going to reiterate, the motorcycle driver was a witness to this, so that kind of rules out foul play from the dad.
Right.
Unless this was some weird thing that they were both working on, but the searchers showed up like quick. There wasn't like a big gap between these two things happening. So I don't think foul play happened here. This kid, the dad loved the kid. They had a good family. There was no money troubles. There was no family troubles. You know what I mean? There wasn't anything leading to that.
Right. It just seems like a typical family.
Yeah. There's actually some missing 401 cases I did not pick because I was just like, oh, the dad killed the kid. Like 100%. And people were like doubting it. I'm like, no, the dad killed the kid. One of the most famous stories of missing 411, which if you watch the documentary, it's almost about that case exclusively. It finally kind of follows the case as well as showing little other side cases to show the connections. But like the whole time, like these parents killed their kid. They didn't want the kid. The mom hated kids. The mom hated their own kid. Like it's just so obvious this whole time they killed the kid. And I didn't want to do any of those. Because I think they're just painfully obvious and sad. Yeah, it's like they're not mysterious. Yeah, like they killed their kid. Like it's fucked up. But yeah, to this day, Sammy is still a missing persons case. He has not been seen once with no more evidence to him, and we may never know. And that's the case of Sammy Bulk. Another theory that I think is to mention that this search was kind of botched because they just never searched the area again.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that one could very well be aliens. But honestly, the kid may have just like when he jumped off, he could have ran so fast away or something. You know, like the dad didn't see, but that seems unlikely. I don't know.
Yeah, like again, I haven't seen the terrain either. I haven't been there.
Yeah, unless like the kid was super smart and like when the dad got up to the top of the boulder, the kid managed to sneak around to the other side and was constantly like juking him, you know what I mean? And then eventually, because like I remember when I was a kid, I'd run out in the woods and my mom would call me in and I wouldn't go in right away, you know? Like,
yeah.
I would stay outside and run around in the woods.
So the biker though saw this happen. So if he went to the other side of the boulder, the guy would have known. The guy would have said like, "Oh, the kid's in here."
Yeah.
But my thought was like maybe he like launched himself off the rock and landed somewhere else or on a plant that covered his footprints, and then he just like dashed behind a tree or a rock and just hid, not answering like you said because he was panicking. Yeah, you know, like I remember he was autistic, so you know it's different. It's why he might not respond. I don't know. So
no, that's incredibly accurate. Like to me, this doesn't sound like one of those mysterious, oh God, could have been an alien, could have been a ghost, could have been a cryptid. It's like, no, I think it was an autistic kid who got scared and ran away and then...
I mean, yes, but I also still think the fact that his dad was so close behind him and he vanished, like that's... Even with me saying like he launched himself and landed somewhere else, like the dad would have heard it. You know what I mean?
It could have been exaggerated.
It could have been.
Even the motorcyclist could have been like, because he was far enough away, would have been like, he was like 10 feet. It's like, he could have been more like 20, 25, 30. Even then, that's still pretty close, but like, still, it could have been. Still, though,
just the lack of footprints, the lack of disturbance in the ground, and the fact that they found the dad's evidence and not the kid's evidence is like, okay, what happened to this kid?
That is pretty weird.
Yeah, so.
I don't know.
At this point, it's been since 2006. It's been a long time. We'll probably never know.
That is a damn shame too.
Yeah, that's a mystery. Maybe
who knows? Maybe they'll find some like an old skull one day.
Yeah, I was just gonna say maybe they'll find some bones or something, or maybe they'll find him alive, living in the woods. You never know.
Maybe he's the missing link.
He's Bigfoot. Wow.
He's Bigfoot.
All right, case number 2, Stacy Arras. Araz. It's Arras. I think it's Araz.
This is the first woman we've had.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Every single one has been a guy so far.
You're right. Yeah, Stacey Araz. There's plenty of women. There's no reason. I think this is the only woman this time too. Just happens to be the ones I picked. I didn't think
it just happened
that.
to be. Yeah, I was just fucking with you, but.
Yeah. So Stacey Araz was a 14-year-old girl in Yosemite, California, in 1981. So we're getting real local with this one. Have you been to Yosemite?
I have not.
I have been multiple times. It's great. Love it. Great place. Not going to go ever again, probably. That's probably
why? Because of this?
I'll go again. Yes, because of this.
I've never been, so
I'll go again. This took place in July 18th of 1981. Stacey Araz was a 14-year-old girl who took a trip to Yosemite with her father. This trip was actually not like a hiking trip or a normal trip. It was a horseback riding trip. And they would be taking a path through the High Sierras, which, if you know Yosemite, it's a region in the mountains.
I do not, but okay.
It's a higher elevation area. It's a specific part of a mountain range in Yosemite. It's called the High Sierra Mountains. Yeah.
That's not, I think I've heard the name.
Yeah.
Is that where Sierra Mist comes from?
It's possible. Maybe they mine it up there from the air in the clouds in the air.
Yeah.
Her and her father would arrive to join a group of 10 people at the base of the mountains, as well as a travel guide, Chris Grimes. So there's this travel guide with 10 people who are taking a horseback trip. Which I've seen people do horse trips in Yosemite before, like in the distance. I've never done it myself, but they have horses there for people to ride. And they would start in the morning to begin their journey, and they would do a non-stop ride until about noon, where they would stop for lunch at the Upper Cathedral Lake. So I'm saying all this in case you really want to track their movements. They stopped for lunch, and then before heading out to their first night stop at Sunrise High Sierra Camp. And this area is about 1.5 miles from Sunrise Lake, which is a very high elevated lake in Yosemite. And it's a very popular place, I should add. People camp at this site all the time. Stacey would be complaining about her body feeling sore at their night stop and proceed to shower in their cabin. And when she got out, she got dressed and decided to stretch her legs on a short mile-ish long hike. Something to note about this area, it is 9,200 feet elevated. And at that elevation, it has pretty low tree coverage. And if you have been to Yosemite, going to this area where you go higher up to where these lakes are, and I have been to the higher lake areas, there is not a lot of trees, and they're kind of separated in small groups, and the ground is mostly just giant slabs of granite with some bushes and a few, you'll notice hatches of 3 to 4 trees dotting the area. But I'm pointing this out because this means very high visibility for everyone there. You can just kind of see outwards quite a distance. So Stacey was leaving. Everyone saw her leave. Everyone knew she was leaving. And on top of that, she wouldn't be alone because the trail guide wouldn't let her go alone. So
that's
Chris,
good.
Chris Grimes, being a trail guide, went with her. And then another man named Gerald Stewart, he was a 77-year-old man who was with them at the time, decided that he would accompany them as well because he wanted to, see the lake area where she was heading to. And they began to hike. So the hike is about 1 mile. And it's not a bad hike. And around the halfway mark, Stewart got tired after riding all day and decided, the 77-year-old man, and decided to take a rest. So he kind of stopped on a rock and sat there. Stacey continued onwards. Grimes made sure that Stewart was okay, and said that you could head back on your own if you want. It's just right back there. They could see the camp from where Grimes was,
right,
where they were resting. And then Grimes began to follow Stacey. So Stacey had brought her camera because she wanted to take pictures of the lake. That was the whole reason she was doing this hike.
Okay.
And then about 50 yards away from her, he saw Stacey ahead climb onto a boulder, likely for a good view, step off and then take one step off the other side, and this would be the last time Stacey would ever be seen.
Jesus Christ.
Grimes went up.
Boulders just beacons for disappearing?
Yeah, it's what I was saying. Boulders are an important thing. It was so something to bring up just right now from the last episode, the last missing for one part. Keith Parkins, the 2-year-old that went that 12 miles in the cold, was found under a boulder, like under a hooked boulder kind of shape. So, so that's a little thing too. But anyway, back to Stacy. Grimes just followed at normal pace, thinking nothing was wrong. Went to the other side of the rock, couldn't find her, began calling out for her. There was basically perfect visibility, like straightforward, so he couldn't see her anywhere. So immediately used his, I think he had a radio to call for help, and a search began. So the search was pretty large. It had 150 people, including 67 mountain rescue volunteers, dogs, and helicopters that would canvass 3 to 5 square miles around the Sunrise Lake area in Yosemite. One clue would be found, which would be the lens to her camera. So her camera lens was found in a hatch of 4 trees. The way these trees, best way to describe them, they're very close, like a couple feet away from each other, and you can just see through them. It's just 4 trees. Just imagine a flat plains of 4 trees you can just look through. Like, you can see between them. So she wasn't hiding in them. There's no way. That's not an option. They found the camera lens, but they found nothing else. She's mentioned as wearing a bracelet, stud earrings, as well as a pair of binoculars and the camera itself, which would never be found. So why only the lens was found in these trees, we don't know. But the dogs were unable to pick up any scent from the lens or from anything anywhere. They had never picked up a scent. So we don't know. We have no direction as to where she went. Again, the area is very dry and dusty with like granite ground, so there's no footprints.
So wow, man. Wait, so did that old man end up going back, or did he end up going with them, joining them?
He never. Well, the old man would have probably just gone back to camp, but he was sitting there resting. She went away, and he was yet looking. He didn't find her, so there wasn't much. I don't know what happened with him, but he's never talked about again the case. He just brought up that he went with them, and he was able to also see them ahead, kind of go off the boulder and go around the boulder. He witnessed the the important part about him in this story is that Grimes is a witness, or Stewart, the old man, is a witness that Chris Grimes, the trail guy, didn't just like kill her. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he saw this happen, saw her, heard him yelling like, "Where are you? Where are you?" And then come back and be like, "Did she come this way?" kind of thing. Like that's his role. Like there was no this. It was a foul play rule out between him at that time.
Okay, so I'm gonna call them, and I'm gonna.
So. Theories as to what happened include her, number one, a popular theory is she ran off on her own. It's known that she was having a fight with her family back home. She was having trouble at school. And she was missing her teenage boyfriend on this trip they were taking. Now, it's important to note that, yes, while teenagers are extremely hormonally guided, if she did suddenly decide to disappear, not that... She was right next to the Yosemite Trail guide. If she managed to somehow get away from them, it's unlikely after a few hours she would probably still be in that mindset of running away in the wilderness of Yosemite, in my opinion.
No, I agree. I can definitely see teenage hormones making you want to run away, but like, of all the places to choose to run away, like, what did she think? I'm going to go live in the forest?
Yeah, and people were looking for her for like days. So, like, at that time, if you're just like hiding under a rock, avoiding people, at day 2 of starving, you're probably this 14-year-old girl will be like, "Please take me home." You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So, this is a case that you can actually find online that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, this one's weird.
Yeah,
this one's definitely weirder than the last one.
This one is fully published. Nothing has been hidden about this place. So Yosemite Park posted it immediately when it was done. It was uploaded to the internet in 1999 on their website. So I went and found it. It's a bunch of like slides of like, you can tell it's projection slides of like there's even pictures of them preparing the search, everything. And I went through it to read through to kind of see if I could get an idea of her character. But she just seems like a teenage girl. So it never mentioned anything about her having survival skills. Nothing about her being sport, heavy. And she wasn't a cheerleader, you know what I mean? It was just like she was just very teenage girl. There was nothing like else said about her. So another thing,
sad.
Well, I just mean like ruling out her ability of like running away and getting away and like surviving. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But another important thing to mention is that she was wearing flip-flops.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
she
that's-
had hiking and riding boots at the cabin. So if she was getting dressed to go out and not come back, I don't think she would put flip-flops on.
right. Yeah.
So, like, she was wearing boots this whole time up until now. So it's like she knew, she had some knowledge of what she was doing at least.
Right.
To, like, you know, I don't know. I don't think she did it on her own. And
No,
then
I don't. That doesn't seem. Yeah, like again, I can believe a hormonal teenager running away, but I mean, teenagers can be stupid, but that's stupid. I don't know. Like that's
Yeah.
pretty. That would be like, oh, give up on humanity levels of stupid.
Yeah, another theory, of course, to bring up is wildlife. As we always do, there is a large bear population in Yosemite,
Yep.
but the bears in Yosemite are black bears, and black bears has never had a case of attacking and
Oh,
killing
yeah.
a human.
Yeah, that's right. Black bears are actually pretty docile.
Yeah,
I mean, they'll fuck with you if you fuck with your
are
kids, but
not even. Black bears won't do
Yeah.
that. They run away with their kids. Black bears are afraid of humans, absolutely.
yeah,
Like
yeah. No, they have black bears in Maine too. So
yeah, I've been camping in Yosemite and Mount Whitsit out here, and we've had black bears walk into our camp, and you stand up, and they're like, "Oh God!" and they run away like goofy idiots. Like,
oh Jesus, no.
they're not even like they're big, and it's kind of weird to have one close to you, but they're like shorter than a large dog. You know what I mean? So it's not they're not as scary as like a big brown bear.
Yeah, yeah. If you think of a black bear, think of basically like a big dog.
Yeah.
Like-
But they're just kind of these adorable bumbling idiots. Just kind of are looking for food.
I love them. Sorry.
yeah.
I love black bears, dude. They really are adorable.
So that is the only animal in the area that is any kind of like danger, I guess. Even though, again, as we mentioned, they're not. But like
They're not, yeah.
there's wolves in Yosemite, but not at that area. They're only in the more northern wooded parts. But what has been ruled as the popular theory is she went into the lake and drowned. And the reason this is a theory is because this is the number one cause of death in national parks in the United States, is drowning.
Drowning. Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, you hurt your foot, something happens, you're in the water, you drown. Like, like you go out into the water. Why she would run away into the lake and not, again, ignore all calls for her, be not searing into the lake, again, we don't know. But that's the theory that the National Park Service today has on record as likely cause of death. If she's dead. Again, no body was found or anything.
Yeah, to be fair, she could be living in a tree somewhere, like that movie Without a Paddle, when they find those random girls living in the tree.
I
remember that?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's not a good movie. It's not a good movie. Don't watch it. But
But that could be her. All right. Finally, foul play is also an option. It's never been
Right.
fully ruled out. There's no evidence of it,
right.
but it's just never been ruled out. Like, we don't know. We weren't there. So
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, the old man could have not been seeing things properly, and that tour guide
exactly.
could have
Yeah.
bashed her skull in or something.
The tour guide. So referencing that, looking into Chris Grimes at all, there's zero bad things. You know what I mean? He just
Yeah.
seemed to be.
I'm sure he was fine. Yeah.
And,
Again,
yeah.
I don't. Yeah. This doesn't seem like a. Again, I met tour guides. They take their job seriously.
Yeah. It's just.
Or he was so good at killing people. She's not the only victim.
Yeah, it's just exactly that's what I mean. Like there could be so many things we just don't know, but specifically there is no evidence of foul play, but there's no evidence of not foul play that we can really guarantee.
Right.
Like there is a witness, but there was an old man and he was far away, so we just don't fully know. And that's the end of the count, end of the story of Stacey Araz. So
That poor girl.
yeah, Stacey. Yeah.
Just a message to teenagers out there: you can get past your teenage years. Just get past them. Just fight through them. Don't run away into the woods. Don't do that.
Yeah,
It's not forever.
There's so many cases too of runaway kids, and some of the missing 411 are runaway kids. Like it started as a my kid ran away kind of thing, and they're never seen again. So just like don't run away.
Don't run away. Yeah.
There's falls, there's creeks that are deeper than you think, and you land face down in one and drown. Like it's a dangerous forest out there.
It's crazy people.
All
There's a
right.
place that Dan Chan, myself, Yeti Wrangler, and my buddy Corey, we hiked called Mount Tumbledown. It's in Maine. It's a phenomenal hiking spot because they got like a big lake on the top, and we went swimming in it. It was beautiful. But this just seems like one of those places that that would have one of those disappearances. It just seems like that national. It's like a national park too, I believe, too.
It probably does. I bet if you look it up, it's got a handful at least.
Yeah, you know what? You're probably right. But I'm glad none
But
of us.
it wasn't you.
It wasn't us that time. Nope. I mean, but like, hey, we're young, but not we're like middle. We're not young anymore, so we wouldn't get snatched up by like teenagers. You know, none of the stories you mentioned like a in shape cognitive 30-year-old. Like, you know.
No.
Like,
Well, we did have a wilderness expert and a quarterback.
oh, that's true.
The quarterback was
true.
30.
That is
So he
pretty
was the
phenom-
first
yeah,
case.
The
So
quarterback was that one was one of the still the way he was found in particular is just weird.
yes, it's very. It was very that case was very weird because it's a more recent one, so there's not as much information again. But it's
Sure.
it's a wild case.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead and continue
Yeah.
for the next
So
one.
our third case is the case of Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy in Tennessee, Appalachia, 1969. So this is another young boy. So again, following so the first case, which is to go back, our first case with Samuel Bulk was every connection that we talked about was present in that case, which is why I started with it. The bad weather, the boulder, disabled young child. Like,
Right.
there we go. Second one, we had a young person with a boulder. Third one, Dennis Martin, we got a young person, and we'll see what happens now. Dennis Martin was 6 years old, and they were a resident of Knoxville, Tennessee. He was with his family and a few other families who were friends of their family, so like they would gather together, and they went on their annual trip to the Great Smoky Mountains, which is a part of the Appalachian Mountains.
That's nice.
Now, I could, and very well might, do an entire episode in the Appalachians. Because I don't know if you know this, but the Appalachians have some of the wildest and most insane stories, including
don't know this.
many missing 411 cases, such as this one, as well as some of the most insane cryptid sightings. Not to mention some of the most frequent cryptid sightings and sounds of people saying, like, hey, from the woods. Like, it is reported constantly in the Appalachian Mountains.
All right.
So outside of constant Wendigo sightings, which we talked about earlier and how that works, that happens a lot in the Appalachians, they have another very, very popular monster sighting, cryptid sighting called knot deer, which I don't know if you've heard of that.
I have not.
So they look like deer that are wrong. Like some knot deer have like their heads upside down, they have really long necks, they spin in circles nonstop, whatever.
Oh, well there's a disease that deers get.
Yes, so
but-
that is the common explanation for it. It's just the spinning thing. But they're not always spinning. Sometimes there's been reports of ones with their mouths that are like vertical instead of horizontal.
Yeah, that's weird.
And like they just stare at you, and if you acknowledge them, like they're gonna kill you. Basically, that's the legend. Anyway, that's another episode.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to get you into the mindset of weird stuff that happens in these mountains. But also,
I'm going to say that
Yeah.
this girl was missing from Wendigo. Done. Okay.
Oh, so it's a boy.
Boy. Sorry. Boy. This boy was-
So another very frequent thing in Appalachian is feral human sightings.
oh.
This is not a myth. This is a fact that there
Yeah.
is entire towns of people living in the Appalachians off the grid, not part of the United States Census.
Yeah. No, we talked about one of them once because remember I talked about how I think it was the FBI raided one of them and like killed them all.
Yes, yeah.
Like, yeah.
So they're moonshiners usually. And
Basically,
sometimes
yeah.
they start as moonshiners who are illegally moonshining, and then it grows into their family comes and lives with them, and then 60 years later you now have a town of people living in ramshackled wooden and sheet metal houses.
Yeah.
And but people know they exist because people buy the moonshine, and they have a car and they drive it down to town and sell their moonshine, but they live in these towns that don't exist. You know what I mean?
And you'll never find. And like if you try to find them, it'll take a long time.
Or you'll
Like,
never be seen again because they are armed. So
They'll kill you. Oh, yeah, they are super armed. They have sons of guns.
Yeah, so that's Appalachia, and this is where it's taking place. On the other side, Appalachia is an extremely popular national park, couple national parks, and hiking area where people don't get missing and killed every day. So, it's also a very nice place.
There's nice places too. Yeah.
Yeah. But back to Dennis Martin's case. This trip is a yearly tradition for these families, as I mentioned previously. So they did know the area pretty well, and they already had a plan and knew what to expect. And this started on Father's Day every year, so June 21st. Father's Day weekend, I should say, which is 20th or 20th maybe 21st. I don't know. It's that time.
Yeah,
that time. They arrived on their first day in the morning, and they would spend it hiking. It was a few stops from the Cades Cove area of the park to the Russell Field area of the park. So again, if you have a map, you can find that on there. Here at Russell Field, they would camp overnight. The next day, their objective was to reach the Appalachian Trailhead, where they would camp overnight again. On their way there, they had to hike through an area known as Spence Field. While hiking, Dennis and a few of the other young boys from the family would plan to surprise the adults by hiding behind some boulders and bushes. There's that word. I said it. At 4:30 p.m., his father went to go get him from behind the bush 5 minutes after he told his dad, and his dad saw him go there to hide, because the other boys had already surprised the family and were coming back. His father went right back to where he saw his son, and he was gone. And he would never be seen again.
Man.
So, his father and some of the other adults in the group would run around in a 2-mile area screaming for Dennis, but would get no answers. Again, keep in mind, this is 1969, so they had no cell phones, so they had to go get help. So after several hours, the National Park Rangers would arrive in the area to search with about 50 people initially. The area Dennis disappeared in is covered in steep slopes, ravines, and heavy brush, and it is also populated heavily by copperhead snakes, with bears, boars, and bobcats. So keep that in mind.
So the kid could have gotten snatched up by something.
Yeah, or just, wounded. But shortly after Dennis disappeared and the official search began, a massive torrential downpour started.
Oh.
So the temperature would drop to 50 degrees. Search efforts would not be able to find any trace. The heavy rains and foggy mist would hamper all attempts to search further in the next few days. In the end, 1,400 people got involved in the search effort, and this is one of the biggest searches in national history.
Wow.
And this sounds great, right? It's great to have all these people. But the problem is, with that amount of volunteers and untrained friends and family, untrained locals, and many Boy Scout troops, they would obscure or destroy possible clues or evidence.
Oh, right.
There was probably just too many people in this safe, and they would travel in groups, and in this terrain, which is very dangerous initially, they could be very easily missing small clues, or even accidentally step on something, or they could be dropping stuff themselves. You know what I mean? That could be seen as evident. It could be very obscuring for the whole situation.
Right. That's why you do need people trained to do this stuff, which is kind of sucky because not a lot of people are trained to do this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually, they did find something, however. Oh. There was a bare footprint that was found. A barefoot footprint, sorry. Not a bear footprint. Yeah, right. It was a barefoot human footprint that was found alongside the footprint of a child-sized shoe. This was dismissed as being one of the Boy Scouts who was searching for Dennis. Which is notably the biggest fault probably in this entire case. Retired Park Ranger Dwight McCarter believes those tracks were in fact Dennis Martin's feet. He said that he never saw a single barefoot Boy Scout, and I can tell you, having been a Boy Scout myself for about a decade, we were trained in searching and rescue kind of stuff, and that you would never go barefoot. Ever. Yeah. Like
that seems silly.
I refuse to believe if a Boy Scout had shoe damage or missing shoe, they would go back immediately. That's what would happen. So the child-sized footprint that was ruled to be one of the Boy Scouts that was discovered alongside the barefoot footprint was an Oxford-style shoe, the same size and kind that Dennis was wearing the day he disappeared. So
that was him?
Yes, this was very, very likely his shoe, and it's likely he just lost a shoe running in the woods. And so he had one shoe on and one barefoot. These footprints would lead to a stream and then disappeared, and they were never picked up again.
That happened. That's happened a couple times too.
Yeah. So on June 22nd, with big hype, my birthday, they found a shoe and a sock. The other shoe matching the other Oxford shoe print, miles away, past the stream from where he disappeared. The search would have covered 56 square miles of ground, and over 1,000 people would continue to search the area until June 26th, when the search was finally cut back On the 29th, the search was ended, but the park rangers would continue work and scouring the area for evidence. And then September 4th, many months later, the search officially closed.
Right.
So the only evidence that was ever found was that shoe and sock. The shoe matched the shoe print, and they were Dennis's shoes. So it's they still at that time, by the way, in 1969, said it was a Boy Scout's footprint, and they didn't say that was his shoe, even though the parents confirmed it was the same color and size and shape of shoe and brand of shoe Dennis was wearing. They refused to go back on their first claim.
So even though the parents are literally like, no, you're lying, they're like, no, it was a Boy Scout.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how it's very government sounding, No, we were right. Of course we're right. We were right.
Yeah, exactly. Like, shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
that stuff so annoying.
Yeah, as of June 2000, or sorry, not June, as of 2021. When I was last evidence I could see, this was the largest search in Great Smoky Mountain National Park history. The amount of people involved was astonishing, but it likely did doom the case of finding the young boy.
Right.
There was a report a few years later from a man finding skeletal remains of a child in Big Hollow, Tremont, which is while fairly distant, it is connected to the area Dennis went missing in.
Could have been.
He would not report these findings until 1985.
Why?
This because he was afraid he would get prosecuted because he was illegally ginseng hunting at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I guess he just couldn't come up with the excuse, I was hiking.
I was hiking.
Yeah, he just didn't tell anyone for 15 years that he found this. But he eventually did. The park rangers went out with dogs to the area to search with some of the original people who were actually in the search originally, but they would end up finding absolutely nothing.
The bones are probably at that point. The bones were long gone.
The bones would still exist, right? But anything would have carried them off from people to animals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Like, long gone.
15 years. Come on. So, possible theories, as we always do. This is the next part of the write-up. Possible theories for his disappearance. Exposure, number one cause, most likely.
Yeah.
From the first night he was missing, it was multiple days of rain, heaviest on the first night.
Pneumonia is a bitch.
Yes, this also would have caused a lot of noise from heavy rainfall, so it's likely even if he did cry out, people wouldn't hear him.
Yeah.
Especially, in the loud woods while you're walking around trudging through, mud and stuff.
Yeah, and honestly, that explains his boots, too. When I was a kid, I would wear boots all the time, but you can get stuck in the mud.
Well, he was wearing Oxfords, which, if you know what they are, they're like basic sneakers, like they're almost a dress shoe. Very 1969 to wear. Why the kid was wearing it hiking, he was 6 years old and probably wasn't walking himself most of the way, to be honest.
Oh, that's probably why.
Yeah.
I mean, his shoe definitely got stuck in the mud.
100%.
So he was probably running and his shoe got stuck.
Yeah.
What was he running from? That's the question.
Yeah, it could have just been anything from fear to an animal. But again, likely soaking wet alone in the dark is a recipe for disaster on any person, let alone a 6-year-old boy. Second theory, of course, wildlife. We got boars and bears, you mentioned, both very aggressive animals.
Especially when you're 6 years old and small.
Yeah, there is brown bears. North American brown bears do live in this area, which will attack. It's mostly black bears, again, like we mentioned before. Black bears, I could see maybe attacking a kid. Again, there hasn't really been reports of it, but maybe if it was starving. A boar, very likely. A boar will charge anything it sees and just rip you to shreds. So
boars are dicks. That's why Galen's based off a boar.
100%. Boars are very, very, very aggressive animals. So that I could see a boar charging him, hurting him real bad. If not killing him, it could definitely break a leg or something, which could lead to his death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, or again, a copperhead snake bite. That'll take you out as you're 6 years old, especially. If you would probably just run really far and then just fall and you would die.
Yeah, and again, probably picked at by because scavenging. Like that's where the black bear comes in.
Yeah, and also back to the bear idea. Brown bears, as we mentioned before in the Bart Schlayer case, they bury their kills. So if a brown bear did kill him, it would bury it, which would would be very, very hard to find in this kind of very rough, like heavy brush. Like all the trees have big roots. You know what I mean? Like it's not a very flat area. You wouldn't even notice a bear cache, which that's what they're called when they bury them.
A bear cache, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you probably wouldn't be able to even find it.
Yeah.
Third, which is I think the most likely, is abduction. Now, as mentioned before, the Appalachians are home to various things and sightings. His father personally believed he was abducted due to the lack of evidence found in the search, except for the shoe. Thinking that instead of your idea of we were both talking about the mud, maybe it fell off when he was kicking because he was being carried by somebody.
Right.
So there was another incident that happened on the same day. A tourist named Harold Key and his family were hiking in the mountains and heard an enormous, sickening scream in the woods. They then witnessed a, quote, unkempt, rough-looking man, unquote, running up out of the woods, getting into a white sedan, and speeding off. Now, while this sounds like pretty much like, oh, of course, someone grabbed him, it was 5 miles away from where Dennis went missing.
Sure. But that's still fucking scary.
Yeah, but again, he has a car, so, like, he could get 5 miles easily, but the way they described him sounds pretty feral human,
That sounds exactly like a feral human.
Yeah, like a wild bushman living in the thing. And there's multiple other cases and murder mysteries that happen. There was one pretty recently in the woods in I think it was New Hampshire, where a man got murdered by someone who just lived in the woods and don't know who he was.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there are people who do that. They just don't want to live in society, so they go off the grid.
Yeah, like
and I'm not surprised. There's so much most of New England is forest, so
I'm calling who to talk about my provider.
Yeah, it's a very possible situation that he got grabbed by somebody.
Yeah.
There's even if it wasn't that man, that was a case of someone seeing someone like that in the area of Appalachia.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand what. See, like, the only thing that would take me away from the idea that it would be a feral person is those people they're not entirely necessarily intelligent, but they're intelligent enough to know not to bring attention to themselves. They know of the outside world, so they don't want the outside world in. So the idea that they kidnap a kid, which would just invite people to come looking for you, that's what seems so, like, I don't know if it was, that's why, like, this is where I step into the creepy area of, like, I don't know if it was a person who abducted him. Like,
yeah, so
that's where I'm at.
Unless they were so confident and good at it, because they were never caught. If that's the case, you know what I mean?
That's true. That is true.
Like, they could have had a system.
They could have. They were just abducting kids every now and again, using them for something, and then throwing them in a log for some guy to illegally hunt. To find 15
yeah, there you go. Putting them off to a certain island to.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, after you're done with the body, what do you do with it? Well, you probably want to throw it pretty far away or make it, or put it somewhere as like a symbol, because it almost sounds like they put it there deliberately,
Or maybe they raised the kid, and the kid now lives in the mountains. Dennis Martins
he could still be alive. He's the best moonshiner in all of North America.
Yeah, there you go. You never know.
He might not be dead. They just needed more people. They're like, hey, we need more workers to make moonshine. Come on, let's get this kid.
Yeah, and I did put a little note on here about the feral people of Appalachia. It is a popular tale to locals, and people who live in the area all know the stories of feral people in the mountains. But there is an astounding amount of evidence, including videos and sightings and helicopters and people on ground hiking and seeing people who look very, like, unkempt and rough, like they said, in the mountains. Like, there's videos of it. You can see it on YouTube and stuff. Like, people being watched from the woods by, like, crazy, hairy-looking men. You know what I mean? Like, it's real.
Yeah. So, it is. It's. Yeah. That's, like, I love nature and stuff like that, but I've always wanted to live in, like, a natural area that does have an adjacent city.
Yeah. That's pretty isolated. But that's the end of the Dennis Martins case. That's everything.
Man, that one's pretty crazy.
You kind of mentioned something, but we're going to talk about Wendigos. Like, maybe Dennis walked away because someone went, hey.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things. It's like, because you said he was hiding from the parents to jump out and scare them and, like, do that whole thing. He could have heard one of his friends calling for him. Hey, we scared them. It's over.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
And then he goes, okay, comes out, and then all of a sudden he sees a thing with 6-foot long arms.
Yeah. So if we're following the supernatural paranormal idea, that's a great theory. I love it. It does add up to the lore of the creature. So it's fun,
But again, this to me does sound a little like, I'm a little skeptical about the feral human thing because, again, I think humans are still smart enough to keep that self-preservation mindset. So, like, the idea that if you kidnap a child, you're only inviting people to come searching for it. The feral people would not want that. But like you said, they might just, be really good at it. Like,
Yeah.
they might be, because they know the land better than, because they live in the dirt, so they know the
Yeah.
land pretty damn well. So that could be that too.
Yeah.
But then again, obviously, if you take that foot into the spiritual realm, it's like, again, if there was any sort of evidence that day or around that time, you know what I mean, there were some cryptic voices being heard, or not feral human but weird human looking sightings, then I'd probably be like, oh. But like, again, this does point to feral human stuff to me.
Yeah.
Especially in the 60s when it's a little harder to monitor stuff.
Yeah, 100%, and easier to fall off the grid.
Way easier to fall off the grid.
When I was reading the details of the case, and I started seeing the story from what was his name, Harold Key, seeing the unkept, rough-looking man. I was like, oh my god, is it a monster? Is it a person? And then gets into a white sedan and drives away part. I was like, oh, it's just a person. It could have been a hunter,
Yeah.
Like, maybe that scream was he shot something miles away or a mile away and had to now get in his car and drive to it. That's a possibility.
That's true. Yeah.
But they didn't say
they have
heard a
guns,
shot,
like I
so
said. They all got
I don't know.
guns.
Yeah. I don't know. So those are the big cases. The last two cases are pretty short, and I saved them for last. But they are they're wild. They don't have a lot of information for different reasons. But since these last ones are pretty, they're pretty missing persony, but they can get are pretty mysterious, but they can definitely have some explanations, like feral humans we were talking about.
Sure.
Now we're going to go into case 4, John Doe, 3 years old. This is known as the grandmother case. It took place, again, we're going to go back to California, Mount Shasta, California, in 2010.
California.
Yeah, so we're back home. We're at Mount Shasta. In 2010, John Doe would go miss. So this whole family's names have been record stricken on their behalf.
Yeah.
They do not want this to be public information, so we don't know his name. We're calling the kid John Doe. We're calling the parents. There is one name in the story because they talk about it, but the person who will talk about it won't give the name up for the rest of the family, and has only talked about it without their last name being present. So we don't know who they are exactly, but this is an official case. This all happened. That's not a question. The names are just off the case.
Yeah. That happens.
Yeah. So in 2010, John Doe would go on a trip with his parents to Mount Shasta, California, and they would camp around a creek, which is a popular fishing spot that was used often by people visiting the park. Everything was fine, and they began fishing on their first day they arrived. They set up their tent. The mother and father would head to the creek with 3-year-old John Doe right behind them, and they would set up to fish, and John Doe would begin playing in the area right next to them. Around 6 p.m., an hour or so later, they turned around. After talking to John Doe still, they would turn around when he didn't answer and not be able to find him. His dad would call out to him with no response. The mom would call out, no response. They would begin to panic, drop their stuff, search for their kid as best as they can, hearing no loud noises, no steps, no nothing. Their father's quoted as saying, "It was as if he vanished into thin air right behind me." So while he could not have gone for more than a few meters, he was nowhere to be seen, and soon enough, police and park rangers would arrive and start searching. So the area on the creek was canvassed in a search by dogs and searchers of around 45 people, finding nothing for the next 5 hours. And it was dark after sunset. A new group of volunteers had just shown up, bringing the group to 80 people. People were shouting his name through the woods in the whole area as best they could. One of the rangers began heading back to the campsite, and sure enough, he finds John Doe curled up, face down, on a patch of ground. He's alive. He's fine. Unharmed, uninjured, as if he never went missing. Now, the weird thing about this is this area was at the campsite. They had searched and never had people not there the entire time. It had been walked through. It had been searched. The tents were taken down, so like he wasn't hiding in a tent. This area was one of the most heavily searched areas, and he was just there all of a sudden.
That's pretty weird. It's like somebody dropped him off, like, "Oh, this is where you were." Okay, here.
Yeah, and so the ranger saw this, called out the name, and the kid got up and said, "It's me." So, like, he responded immediately.
Right.
So the ranger grabbed him, got to the parents, took him back. Happy day. Kid's found.
Great. Yeah.
So,
wonderful.
yeah, great. You know, the parents didn't question it at first. They were happy his son had been found. It was
Yeah.
weird. They said he must have been hiding in a log or a rock or something. The rangers said, you know, we're good at our job. We don't know what happened. Like, we searched the logs and rocks. He was not there. So they don't have an explanation for this. They still don't to this day. This is a case the park, even though he has been found and solved. The park rangers will not give any information about this case. 3 weeks later, John Doe is being looked after by his grandmother. His grandmother, the only one we have a name for, Catherine, would go by the nickname Cappy to John.
Okay.
So, you know, sometimes you give your grandparents weird names, right? It's very common.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, he would say Cappy. He was eating lunch with his grandmother, and she would become quite frightened when he simply said, "I don't like my other grandmother, Cappy, as much as you." As his only grandmother,
Okay.
she was very confused and didn't know what that meant, so she asked John to tell him. John told her that a few weeks ago, when he was camping with his mom and dad, his other grandma, Cappy, grabbed him in the woods and took him away. He didn't cry out
Holy shit.
because it was his grandmother, and he told her that this grandma, Cappy, took John to a cave full of spiders. And he described what sounded like a full medical procedure being done to him, and that Cappy was a very stern and rude version of his grandmother, and made him sit perfectly still the whole time, even though the spiders in the cave scared him. He also mentioned her skin would shimmer like metal under the light, and described it like looking almost like a robot.
What the fuck?
Catherine got scared and called John's parents, and they said John told them the same story a few days ago, but they were sure it was nothing but, you know, a trauma dream from the event.
Sure.
Which, it's a 3-year-old. It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Catherine, however, didn't believe that, because she also had something happen in the woods very recently in that same area. About 1 year ago, she was at the same creek of Mount Shasta, and when camping there with a friend, one morning she woke up finding herself outside of her tent face down on the ground, with no memory of how she got there. She felt a pain in the back of her head and felt a small wound with 2 puncture marks, similar to a spider bite. She went inside the tent and found her friend she was camping with the same. He was still in the tent, but he had the same painful wound with 2 marks in the back of his head. They both looked at each other's wounds and described them looking exactly the same.
What?
They both wondered if this had been related to what they witnessed the night before. While they were getting ready to go to bed, they heard noises in the woods and shined their flashlights in the area. The only thing they could see was a pair of red eyes staring back at them that wouldn't move or go away. Catherine strongly believes to this day that what she saw was the same thing that took John, and likely her friend that night, and caused the spider she described in the cave were something that caused a spider-like bite. Currently, everyone in the family is alive and well, but now with this kind of coming to light, they have tried to seek through official means some more information, but have gotten nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. That is. Yep. That's the weird. This is the weird one.
So, yeah, now we're getting into some weird alien kind of territory or something, or deep government shit. But the thing that stands out to me about this boy's description, and it probably not being a dream or a traumatic recollection, is apparently he went into detail describing a medical procedure. He's 3 years old.
Right. That's fucking weird.
And he hadn't had a medical procedure that's like any kind of, like, he'd had one, like, you know, as a 3-year-old, he hasn't had a medical procedure yet. He hasn't had a physical, nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like,
he's a 3-year-old.
he was describing actions that would be a medical procedure. And who knows what these spider things he saw were. But, you know, a 3-year-old isn't very good at, you know, describing things.
Right.
So, you know, that's weird. That's a weird one.
Weird. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like how the grandmother too is just like, nah, bullshit. Like,
Yeah, the grandma was like, "Oh, okay." Like, she had a weird event, didn't tell anybody about it, because, you know, maybe it's just weird. But I thought, like, you know, red eyes in the woods is a pretty common thing. If there's like a wolf or something like looking at you, it's not really dangerous. It's kind of looking at you.
True.
a spider bite, maybe a big spider bit both of them, even though it was the same exact spot. And
Yeah,
you know, why was she outside? You know, weird. But that incident, again, my skeptic mind is gonna always say that incident, while a great connector, there is no other witnesses except 2 people claiming the event. So take that with a grain of salt, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
But, you know, it makes for a mysterious case. The fact that their name isn't attached to it also removes the idea to me that they're looking to get money out of it.
Same. Yeah.
Which means that makes it more believable, you know? They don't want
I agree.
the fame, they don't want the attention. They're like, this happened, you don't know who I am, but this happened.
Yeah.
of
This
thing.
happened. Fuck off.
Yeah. And
Yeah. So far, the only thing that's been a tie-in besides like some of the other thing, like the boulders and stuff, it's like I'm so enamored with the why the hell won't any of the authorities talk about it? I hate that. That's the
Yeah.
thing that bothers. Because all the theories between aliens and Wendigos and feral people, I'm sitting there thinking like, because the authorities won't talk about it, I'm blaming them. I'm like you're fucking behind this somehow. Because I'm just like because why wouldn't they just be like, oh, why wouldn't they tell us? Why wouldn't they tell you? Like, what happened? Instead of
Yeah,
like, oh,
so
blah,
a
blah,
popular
blah, blah.
the popular theory, which we talked about during the Wendigo Skinwalker thing, is that
Yeah.
it's similar to the alien idea that they know they're out there, but they don't talk about it to cause panic, and that these
Right.
missing people's cases are within an acceptable margin of missing people to
Right.
them. You know what I mean? Like they
Yeah.
think like people fall through the cracks. It happens.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
you
like,
can't keep
yeah.
track of everybody.
Yeah, that's
It's
kind
that
of their
true.
defense. Then it's just like you can't keep track of everyone, so it's just like
Yeah.
until something major were to happen, they can keep it on the hush hush.
Yeah.
I'm,
yeah.
I'm a very skeptic person, so I always put very heavy grains of salt in all these things I hear. I want to believe them, but I don't believe them.
Right.
My skeptical defense of the park, of the National Park Services, and not talking about them is they don't know anything. They don't want to look like they don't know anything, or they simply lost these files. Like they don't
Oh.
keep good track of anything. Like, you know what I mean?
That could be
They don't
it.
have
They
it's a big known fact. They do not have a shared database. If there is a file of this information, it's at one specific office where this happened, and that's it.
Right.
There is no. That's people who have been complaining about it for
That should-
years.
Yes, but
for
that should probably
years.
change. It's,
yes.
it's 2022. We should
But
probably
again-
have like a fucking network for these.
Yeah, again, no one checks the Park Service. They're their own entity, so it's like no one's gonna be like, you have to do this, get modern. Like, no, they have to decide themselves. So
Yeah.
it's just like it's people go missing, and then to get any information on it, you have to go to the Park Service office of where they went missing. Otherwise,
Yes,
you're
I-
not going to get any information.
I feel like they have no excuse. Like they should really
They
just get their
don't.
shit together and get the internet.
Yeah, they don't have an excuse. It's a stupid problem. But yeah,
You hear
that was case 4. John
That
Doe.
National Park Services, for fuck's sake, just get the internet.
Get your stuff together. Get on
Seriously.
it. Nut up. Put your stuff online.
Yeah.
like
God damn
it's
it.
just it's stupid.
And just show us the pictures of the Wendigos already. You have them.
Yeah, show us your maps of where they are. Like, we know you
Yeah,
got
I
it.
want to see it. Let's go, you and me.
Yeah, we're gonna do a live Lords investigative report where we break into a national parks office after dark. It's totally not a federal offense, I promise.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. Oh god.
All right, case 5. Danny
Let's go.
Philippitis, a firefighter that went missing in New York in 2018.
Okay. Oh, that was fucking recently.
Yes, that's what I said, and that was the hint I let earlier. We got a very, very recent case, 2018, the most recent case.
Wow.
So this is a very, very interesting one. People might even know this in the news if you're in New York or Toronto, because Danny Philippitis while he went missing in New York, he was in fact a Canadian fire captain for the city of Toronto.
Cool.
And on February 2nd, 2018, he decided to go on a skiing trip with his friends to New York at Whiteface Mountain Ski Resort.
Neat.
This
I
is
actually
up-
know where that is.
I was gonna say I don't know what
I've
this
never
is.
been,
I didn't know where it was. I should say. I Google Maps searched it, looked it up. Very nice looking place. I want to
yeah.
go there.
I've never been there, but yeah, it's very nice there.
It looks like a very expensive and very gorgeous place to go skiing. Yeah, upstate New York. Obviously, it's a very short trip from Toronto, where they're from. So,
Oh yeah.
they would arrive with no issues and begin skiing. They would ski all morning, and at 2 p.m. they decided to stop for lunch. But Danny had other plans. Danny said he wanted to do one more big run from where they were going to lunch all the way back up, and they said, okay, go for it, dude. So he went down the mountains. They got food. 2 hours later at 4 o'clock, Danny's not back yet. In this 2 hours, his friends weren't complete dickbags, luckily, and they were texting and calling him and getting no responses. The calls were going through, the texts were going through, there was just no answers. Right. So they decided to go down and look for him. So they went down the run on their skis, they got to the bottom of the hill, couldn't find Danny, couldn't find any ski tracks of where he might have been, nothing. And so begins the search. So a team of 130 people would begin searching around the mountain and all the areas beneath it. They would find no trace of him. Even there was no ski tracks or footprints matching him found at the bottom of the hill. An important note to say right now, there was no car tracks either. Just to keep that in mind, there was no car tracks down there. They would search overnight, and due to
big snowstorm,
they couldn't keep searching anymore. Yeah. It wasn't a huge snowstorm, but it was indicated as bad weather. And I actually wrote, for the record, this is recent, and this is a case that isn't talked about a lot for reasons we'll go into in a little bit. But I tried to look through as many news sources and articles on this as I could. I couldn't find matching evidence records for this search in a lot of cases. Some say it was called off due to a storm. Some say it was light rain and snow that they kept searching through. Some say it got too cold and they had to stop. So some didn't even mention the weather. So like it's I can't come to a definitive conclusion there was bad weather or a snowstorm that stopped this.
Sure.
But multiple things mention different weather aspects, so it's likely it was just rainy and cold or snowy and cold, and they just kind of slowed down the search at least. But many details in this case are not public yet because it's only 4 years old.
Sure.
But it's still interesting to me that after 2 days, the search ended. They ended the search after 2 days. That was it.
Wow,
these other cases we talked about, they would go for like the one with the kid in Appalachia. They went for like 2 months. Yeah. So it's like,
that's so. Why would they just give up like that? That feels like they're just giving up on the guy.
Yeah, they couldn't find anything conclusive. There was no direction of where he went, so they just stopped searching. So, family, friends, very upset. Everyone goes back home. 6 days later, Danny's wife at home gets a phone call from an unknown number. Answering the call, it was the very distant sound of a voice and a lot of static, and eventually a few words able to make out, and she recognized it was Danny's voice.
No shit.
He sounded incoherent and confused and was talking mostly nonsense, but he knew his wife's name and was calling out to her. However, suddenly he hung up the phone.
Oh, God.
She would call him back, and thankfully he picked up. He was very confused sounding, and she managed to convince him to call 911 for help. He said he doesn't know he said he didn't know where he was. He didn't know what to say. And she said, just call 911. Just make the call, get people to you, describe where you are, they'll find you. 911's local. So he did that. Eventually, on the 911 phone call, which we don't have the record of yet, he described his surrounding best he could and was very confused at where he was. But eventually, paramedics knew exactly where to find him, and they did. And he was in all his ski gear still. So he was still wearing his same ski gear, holding a brand new iPhone.
What?
His hair had been shaved. And much to his surprise, and everyone else in the case, he was in the airport terminal car rental depot in Sacramento, California.
What the fuck?
He was 3,000 miles away from where he had vanished 6 days ago, with no memory of how he got there or where he had been.
What the fuck?
When he realized how long it had been and where he was, he began to go into a full panic, which I respect because this is the most realistic reaction I've heard from any of these cases.
Yeah,
apparently, he even started pushing paramedics off of him, saying like, fuck you, you're lying kind of thing.
Well, I probably would do that.
And you can imagine this guy. He's a fire captain, so he's like a built dude. I've seen pictures of him. He's a very fit man.
Like, that's the thing. Like, these are the ones that blow my mind the most. Is when it's the cognitive regular folk, like the adults, the people who've got their heads on straight, or so we think at least. Yeah.
So he got back home. End of the case. That's basically the end of this whole mystery, which is why I was talking about why there's not a lot to like look into for it, because it's just news articles of the incident. You know what I mean? That's like all we have right now. There is a little more because he has done interviews since, because of course this is a crazy story that was nationalized in Canada and America.
Right.
So he's been in a couple American talk shows. Like he was on Good Morning America. He was on he's on the Canadian version. It's not called Good Morning Canada, unfortunately. It was called like I think it was called like Wake Up North or something. I don't know. Any Canadians might know. It had some name like that. It sounded like the same kind of idea. And kind of that kind of stuff, like the morning daytime TV
the fluff
circuit.
Stuff. They're not going to try to scare you in the morning though. They're not going to talk about the details. He
was like, "Oh yeah, stuff happened." So here's the interviews, and while unsure if there's an actual memory or not, he has an image of his head. He says it could be a memory or just a dream of being told by a truck driver he was in Utah, but that's it. So he's unsure if it's a memory. Could have just been a dream. Doctors that looked at him. He was diagnosed to having head trauma. So it's likely he hit his head either on the mountain going down or something, which is interesting in itself because he wouldn't like doesn't explain a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sure, he got hit in the head, but he's still, that doesn't take you to Sacramento.
I've heard of people taking drugs and then appearing in cities they didn't intend to be in, but I've never heard of somebody like bonking their head and being like, yeah, I shaved my head and then I went to Sacramento in my ski gear and I got a new iPhone.
Yeah, it's weird. But they do think it could have left him with short-term amnesia, and he could have got picked up by a truck on the mountain, which is why I brought up the point earlier. There was no car tracks found at the bottom of the mountain, so he would have had to walk away through the snow, and it's possible his footprints could have been covered up via snow movement, just through wind and stuff like that, but that wasn't seen if that was the case. The other theory is that he entered a fugue state, which you know what a fugue state is?
I mean, I've heard it, yeah. It's like a dream.
Yeah, basically it's like you kind of forget reality for a hot minute, and you kind of just like wander and kind of have your own little mini life during this. Some people in fugue states have even reported like having imaginary families in the back of their head, like then they go away, you know?
Yeah.
So the fugue state is more likely an answer because the incident, the 6-day period for short-term amnesia doesn't fit. It's too long or too short. Like, you know what I mean? Short-term amnesia is usually like 2 days. Long-term amnesia is like months. So 6 days is a very short. It's an undocumented time for that. But if he had a fugue state, it's very possible he hit his head, triggered a fugue state, walked down the mountain, and just took a truck, hitchhiked. You know what I mean? Like through a big rig or something, and ended up in Sacramento. You know, we don't know. But this brief
sounds like kind of the most likely.
Yeah, and this brief lapse of memory could lead you on a wild journey because you wouldn't know what his objective was. He would never know. You know what I mean? You're gonna be like, oh, gotta go back home to Sacramento, even though it's not real. You know.
And then he got there and he was just like, wait a minute, I don't.
Yeah, and he got there and it like clicked that there was no life here and it ended his fugue state. Right. But here's some problems that I have reading all this. This is my own narrative now. It's very weird that he would just leave the mountain initially, right? Like, why would you just be like, oh, I gotta go to Sacramento, even though knowing you're in New York? Because usually when people have fugue states, some kind of sense can be made. Like, it's a spin-off of their life. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh, I gotta get back to Canada, not Sacramento. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of thing. There is no big rig evidence or truckers or big rig drivers who have mentioned him or seen any of his show being on TV and mentioned picking him up. No one has said anything like that. So, of course, that one driver might have just missed it all. You know, it's possible. But that hasn't happened. But would a big rig trucker really pick a dude up in full ski gear off a mountain with nothing and just take him somewhere when he asked?
I don't know. You'd have to talk to the trucker culture people about that one because truckers have their own culture. So, like...
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've talked to people.
Maybe they have that kind of thing where they're like, I mean, I know a lot of truckers who keep themselves safe and they don't like picking up strangers.
That's what I was going to say. Everyone I know who is a trucker would never pick someone up.
Right, yeah.
They don't. You don't pick up truckers. Usually do not pick up hitchhikers. That is very rare.
I only picked up a hitchhiker once, and it was because she was... Never mind, but like it was a wild story. But definitely, it's not related to this. It was really sad actually. But I wouldn't pick up a dude in ski gear, like
Yeah, so, and like a large dude too, like a fit man, a fire captain.
Yeah,
like he's like, hey, can I get a ride to like California? Like,
no,
no, like
I'm going to the store, dude. Anyway.
So yeah, it's just like it's very weird that would happen. If someone did pick him up, why would they just not drop him off at like a local hospital or police station? If you're having a fugue state or head trauma amnesia, you're not normal. You can tell.
Yeah.
You can tell something's wrong with somebody, and they wouldn't just like listen to you. Probably they'd take you to like the cops or the hospital. You know.
Right.
And if you just had a head injury, you'd probably be bleeding.
That too.
Like you'd probably have some kind of crack in your skull and like bandaging and holding your brains in. You know what I mean? Like it's just like that's a lot for just.
Yeah.
That's a long way to go. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't.
Another
It's very
theory, of
strange.
course, is he intentionally ran away, trying to get away from his life. His reaction doesn't say that.
Yeah, I was about to say the way his life sounds is that like he lived a pretty decent life.
Yeah.
He was a chief firefighter, or captain.
Yeah.
and,
So,
like,
and again, just for the record, he's alive and well right now. He's still the
great.
chief. He's still the fire captain in Toronto for some fire
Wonderful.
department. So he makes good money. He has a happy family. He can afford to go on ski trips at Whiteface Mountain. Like,
Yeah,
he's living
yeah,
a
no.
pretty good life.
yeah, that's expensive. That's not cheap. That's some shit there.
Yeah, it's a very weird case. It doesn't it's
No.
yeah. But that's it. That's my last 5 cases.
Damn, that was, I felt like the last 5, I had more like alien Wendigo theories this time around. I'm like, it just seems like a lot of kind of sad shit happened. I don't know, like I've heard stories of people who like are in the happiest situations. They got their their family, they got their job, they got everything they want, but then they still like disappear on purpose for a few months just to like live a different life because they want to know what it's like.
Also,
but, like, that doesn't sound like that. That doesn't
Also,
sound like that at all.
the common phrase of money can't buy happiness is usually true to people who reach that kind of cap point where they're like,
Yeah,
they're making enough money where there's nothing I can buy to like make me happy
Yeah.
at this point. Like I have a house, a family, a job, a car, like nothing's going to, I've reached
Exactly.
this
That's
cap,
why
so
at that-
you do something wild, like you're
Exactly. At
saying.
that point, you want to do, you want to like, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I give people like one of my biggest pieces of advice is try to have as many experiences as possible. Cause that's the thing I'm afraid of. You know what I mean? Like, not for me personally, I've done a lot of things already, but like, that's why I feel very satisfied. It's like, I see a lot of people who don't do a lot of things. And then they're oftentimes the ones who do the dramatic things, like disappear off the grid or whatever, like
Yeah.
I've had friends who kind of did what I did, but they thought it was a lot of my friends when I moved away, they thought it was an impulse thing because they're just like, oh, he's just doing something crazy and he'll be back in a year or two. It's like, no, I had friends who did that though, because they're doing exactly what I'm describing, is they grew up and did the same things over and over again for 20 years. And then they were like, oh, I'm going to go try this. So they lived in Vegas for like a year or two. And then they're like, oh, this sucks, I'm leaving. But like I moved because I moved. Like I was like, oh, I have goals and ambitions. Like I didn't like lose my fucking mind or like try to.
Yours was
like,
a very planned out event. It wasn't an
Yeah,
impulsive, I need to change something, I'm going to try and do something different.
Exactly. And you're dead on when you're like, I mean, what, like when you have enough money, again, like you said, money doesn't buy happiness. So it's like you can, but when you do have money, you have access. So like that guy could have easily bought a new iPhone and just give it. Maybe he gave a trucker $1,000. Maybe he like slapped $1,000 in a trucker's hand and just said, "Take me to Sacramento." And the trucker went, "All right."
Yeah.
Like,
So the reason why I also don't believe that is doctors diagnose him with a head injury.
yeah,
Like I mentioned,
that's the thing that
he had a
that's,
physical
again,
hit. He had a physical injury. Like there was a mark
Yeah.
on his head. Something hit it. He hit his head on something, or something.
He hit his
Someone
head.
hit him. One of the two. Like
Yeah.
so, it's likely while skiing he hit his head and it could have triggered a fugue state. That's my most likely explanation outside of a alien or portal
I don't really-
gateway
yeah.
through time taking him across the.
This
country.
this one I definitely don't have that like.
I don't either.
Like spirit like
If it was
otherworldly.
one day, sure, but the 6-day thing makes it more reasonable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If he literally showed up in Sacramento a day later, I'd be like, well, he had to have gotten on a plane. But no one at an airport would let a guy like that on a plane. Like,
No, absolutely
in full
not.
ski gear. They'd be like, sir, especially in 2018. Like, no way.
Yeah.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Yeah. Another
yeah,
possibility,
I mean,
just to say, maybe he rented a car, which is why he was in a rental car depot. Again, you need to show record of that, however. So unless he had a fake ID and got away with it, or fake records to do that,
Right.
that didn't
It'll
happen.
be interesting to see in the next few years if things come out about it to see like, like if like even his credit card purchases came up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
did he buy the iPhone or did somebody else buy?
Yeah,
the iPhone?
the other thing
that's
is-
stuff I want to know.
He's Canadian, and
Right.
he was in America, so he had a passport. And for flying, his passport was not changed, so he did not go through an airport. So
Yeah, okay, so he definitely took roads. So
Yeah.
I mean, the likeliest scenario is there was somebody who, like, again, the truck thing makes sense, especially since he said he had that like weird vision that he was in Utah or whatever.
Yeah.
like he, I mean, or you know, that truck could have been a part of the journey. You know.
yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it might not-
It could have also been multiple trucks. You know,
Yeah, could have been.
he could have
been,
gone to
truck
truck
stop,
stops. Yep, exactly, and picked up
Yep.
someone else, gotten someone else's truck. You know, you never know.
Yeah, you never. Yeah, it's true. And I know, and like, you know, we were talking about truckers being defensive and like making sure that they're not picking up psychopaths and stuff like that. I do actually would also like to say that a lot of truckers are empathetic too. You know, they're also very like, all right. Like, you know, they're very
Yeah.
good. Generally, like they're hard to trust, maybe, but they're like, they don't want to trust you at first. But then if you trust them, they're pretty nice. Like,
Yeah.
I've gotten, you know, like there's a few of them, but although they'll say anything they want.
It's definitely its own culture too.
Yeah,
We'll do a truckload, or we're not. I'm not going to
That
do a
would
truckload.
that'd actually be fun, man. I don't know. I always like truckers. I don't know. I always had because it's a hard job, so I've always had my my mad respect for truckers.
But yeah, that was my last 5 missing 401 cases, Pat.
I think the second to last one was the weirdest one.
Yes, the second to last one. I was just gonna say the John Doe one.
That's the John Doe one.
the wild card one.
That's some shit. Like
I-
literally, like the grandmother had her own very specific and detailed experiences as well. You know, that's some.
Yeah, I mentioned another case last week, which I did find some more information on. I don't remember her name, but it was a 3-year-old girl with a very, very similar story. But I did put a note to bring it up, so I'm bringing it up now. Compared to John Doe, it was a 3-year-old girl who went missing while camping with her family. She was found the same night, naked in the woods, crying.
Jesus.
And she had a small cut. Only injury on her was a small cut, I think, on her left cheek. And the rescuers got her back, and when she was asked what happened, I mentioned this last week, she was told by someone who looked like her mom to poop in a bag. That's
Right,
what
yeah.
she said. So it's another case of a child saying someone who looked like their relative and listening to them because they're their relative and they're 3.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like-
Oh no. Yeah. If I saw a doppelganger look like my mom as a 3-year-old, I'd be like, "Mommy,
Yeah, exactly. You can't. It's just like, it's a
mean mommy, but mom."
weird.
That's
weird,
fucking
weird
bizarre,
kid
man.
things. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, it is possible to make a mask. You know, a mask of mom, and then put a mask on and try to convince him. But I don't know. You can. That's that uncanny valley thing. You know,
Yeah.
like you can always tell when someone's wearing a mask, even if they think it's really good. Like something that
Yeah.
looks wrong. With them.
Also, let me see if I can find his name real quick, because I did look up this guy's case, which also was super interesting.
Right. Man,
His name.
I might have a little vodka after this. We have some vodka in the freezer. I don't know. I gotta think of something to play after that though. But man, I do love the mystery stuff. The mystery stuff is really fun because like
Henry Poster. That was his name. I mentioned
I
him
think you
last
mentioned
week.
this him-
He
Yeah.
he was he does not have enough for a case. He was hiking with his friends. He went missing around a boulder. Turned around a boulder. Went to get back to get his water bottle. His friends went back to follow him when he wasn't there for like 2 seconds because he just they waited
Right.
they're like, where the fuck are you, dude? And they went around and
Yeah.
he was gone. He was found later that night by rescuers in the woods, gasping for air as if he had been exposed to the pressures of space.
Yes,
And
that's right.
he was suffering from severe hypoxia. So no one knows the story. That's the whole story. There's nothing else to tell in the story. The search,
well, that
just
time
search details.
it's aliens. I'm just
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Well,
he
that's
was
aliens.
found wearing his same stuff except his jacket was off. He didn't have his
Yeah.
bag anymore, and he was found. They heard him before they found him because he was gasping for air. And they kind of got him, and he was
Yeah.
coughing.
Oh,
and after a little while, he started recovering from hypoxia because he was back,
Yeah.
But they're like, he has some weird
Look, the aliens that time when they did that abduction, they literally forgot. This is why checklists are important, and even aliens, they forget their checklists. And I bet one of them was like, "Fuck, we forgot to put on atmospheric. Oh shit.
Oh,
put it back,
crap!
put it
The
back, put it back,
tractor
put it back,
beam
put it back,
missed.
put it
He's still
back,
outside. He's outside. He's outside. He's outside.
Put it back, put it back, put it back, put it back, just put it back, just put it back." Like, oh fuck.
So yeah, that's a weird one. There's another case which I couldn't find. I know I've heard it before on a different podcast. I never went to look for it, but it was a case of a man who was walking. He took one step into the field and his foot disappeared in front of him.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember this one. And then he was I didn't mention this before. I don't think.
Okay.
He was hiking with his friends. He was in a field. He took his foot he noticed was gone when he looked down, like it was disappearing as he was stepping further down. And then the next thing he remembers is when he was found 3 days later in the woods.
Did he have his foot?
Yeah. So the way he described it is, it was like a sci-fi film stepping through like an invisibility like thing. Like as he was putting his foot down, it was disappearing.
That's how they get you.
And then he was with his friends in a line, and they turned around to ask him something, and he was gone. And then he was found 3 days later in the woods, healthy. So that's a weird one.
That's really weird. That sounds like a time skip one too. Like anytime they come up healthy like that, I'm like, they were gone for 3 days and they're fine. Okay, that's fucking weird. Like,
or he stepped into some cloaked Star Trek ship and they just took him took care of him and brought him back.
Yeah, I mean, I also have like a lot of theories on like the interdimensional travel stuff, quote unquote, because like, again, we talked about this I think last week, is that on this planet that we call Earth is hurtling through the universe, very quickly, and we're not in the same, like, I think on a stream the other day somebody joked that like if you went back in time, you'd actually like just reappear in some random ass area in space, because we're not like you can't go back in time on this planet because the planet was miles away, it was 1 million miles backwards, and so if you went back in time, you'd pop up over there and you just die in the vacuum of space, like. And like, so my other theory is like, as we're hurtling through space, we're literally hurtling through, towards, around, like not necessarily like pocket dimensions, and if we want to go into that theory, but that could be it too, but like even just very quickly going through other, I don't know, like physics, even like physics itself can, like, I mean, there was that whole, what is it, like I forget what exactly it was, but there was like an astrophysicist was talking about time and how time moves on certain, like on our planet as opposed to where it can move on other planets. They actually did this. They tried to mimic this, I think, in that movie Interstellar, where like, there's that one guy who was up on the spacecraft and they landed on the planet. They were only there for like an hour.
I was just going to bring it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was 27 years.
Yeah. But that type of physics in theory, again, it's a theory still, but like it's still, there's a lot of evidence.
It's almost out of a theory because we can test it on Earth with it working. But yeah, it's there's a lot of people talk about when they talk about time travel, it's forward only, never back.
Yeah.
Because if you stand by the Great Pyramids and someone's standing on the road, your watches tick at different speeds. Right. So the bigger an object you're around, time slows down. And so, speeds up is what it is. Like people were saying, if you go around a black hole or something, by the time you get back, it'll be 200 years. So like they could theoretically use that as a form of future time travel at some point. Yeah. But that's
which is pretty cool. But again, thank you. I really just backed up what I was saying. Like, but that kind of science, that kind of astrophysics does lead me to believe like maybe that guy literally was, as we were passing through in that for 3 days, maybe we were passing through something, you know what I mean? And that guy was in the right fucking spot to where he accidentally, maybe he showed up in some random dimension and they were like, you don't belong here. Like, but
it's I'm not a scientist, so I don't have everything I'm saying is loose memories. But
again, it's all
stuff, in the case,
garbage that I've read from scientist blogs or in podcasts I've listened to, that kind of stuff.
In the case of the man losing his foot when he was stepping through nothingness and waking up 3 days later, he didn't have all his stuff either, which is very common in these cases. So it seems like, something was involved. Something was poking around.
Yeah, I mean, again, we are hurtling through the universe, but there's stuff hurtling right alongside us. Like, so there's stuff parallel to us right now. And I mean, shit, on the Mars rover recently found, what is it? Like, what was it? It's like signs of moisture or something underneath, like, something. What the fuck was it? Where's my phone? Something more to definitely point at life on Mars has been found. One of those types of things, you know? Let me look that up.
Yeah, the new Mars rover can like super analyze soil and stuff. Also got the first ever like sound recordings. I don't know if you heard that.
I did, and I mean, it just kind of it almost sounded like Uncanny Valley Earth.
Yes, no, 100%. Well, it's only uncanny because we know it's Mars. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can just put that soundtrack playing a valley in Arizona and it adds up. But like, you hear it and you're just like, oh man, I'm hearing. It's like one of my favorite things is the Russians got a probe on Venus, and
I did know about
and
that,
it recorded audio, and you can listen to it like on YouTube. You can hear the storms on Venus, and it's just like, it's so wild to just think like, man, this is an alien planet.
Yeah,
with the yellow skies.
Yeah,
and this is the sound of the storm. Yeah, like
Oh, this is what it was. NASA's Curiosity rover. This was January 18th, so about a week or two ago. I read this. NASA's Curiosity rover found some interesting organic compounds that may be signs of ancient Mars life. So, like, that's fucking crazy. Like, that's all I have to say. Like, just finding organic compounds on another planet literally points to that direction, you know?
Yep. But and if you remember playing Stellaris, and whenever you would find, before you would find anybody, there would always be an event that'd pop up and be like, microbial life found. And it'd be like, it would like shatter the minds of all your people because aliens were discovered, kind of thing. Like, that's seeming to be this direction we're heading. Like,
I know. I loved what we were talking about last week, how like the Pope seems to be going on this world tour to like try to somehow unite religions or something, like, or like not like unite them, but like try to make peace and have this understanding. It's like, because there is probably something kind of big coming, you know, like.
Yeah, well, it's just like if there comes a point where people find microbial alien life, that's it.
Yeah,
they're real. Sorry, aliens exist. Like 100%. Like, it's that is alien, and you just got to kind of get with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, get with it, guys. Get with the times.
Well, you know, it's going to be. There's going to be anti-alieners, alien deniers.
Sure. I mean, they already exist. Like, but
I know, but I mean, like, even if like aliens, if like we do that, they're gonna be like, they're lying to us. It's fake, you know, that kind of thing. But again,
it's all Hollywood and fucking they're out to the studio in Hollywood.
They're just the minority, you know.
It's true. I mean, like I said, and I'm going to keep saying it anytime we have conversations like this, just make yourselves known. Pop up at an Ariana Grande concert. I'm telling you. Like, just reach out to Ariana Grande. Give her the responsibility, you know. Make this poor girl, dude.
Make Ariana Grande our ambassador to the stars.
Exactly. Let me just make this pitch. Mr. Colt, if you're out there, or Mr. Colt's relatives, I don't know how long your lives are. You maybe have shorter lifespans than us. So if you're a kid of, was it Indrid or Ygritte? I don't remember. Indrid, right? Indrid Colt, if you're out there, or a son or daughter of yours, or I don't know, maybe a third gender.
He said he had a son with a name.
Oh, he did.
Or two sons. I can't remember the names, but yeah, he said he had two sons.
One of you guys are listening, just go talk to Ariana Grande. Like, do it kind of in pseudo-private, not totally private, because you don't want to scare her alone, especially because she's a young woman. You don't want to do that. Like, just say, like, hey, I'm from another planet, and it's time we show ourselves. Can I come out on a concert and you introduce me to everybody? And that's it. And there you go. Don't do it to the president. He's going to deny it. He's also... the poor guy's got one foot in the grave already. Just leave him alone. Like, just don't go to an authority figure. Go to a pop star. Maybe not him. Maybe not Ariana Grande. Who'd be the best, like, not Neil deGrasse Tyson, because he vehemently denies the existence. Because he's like, Neil deGrasse Tyson's argument is always, if aliens existed, then why haven't they come here yet?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, because they took one look at us and went, fuck that.
Yeah. It's like, do you really think as humans you would just land on the first alien settlement you see, like, oh look, aliens, go, go, go? Like, no. Like, you wouldn't just do that. That's how you get yourself killed or get all of them killed. You know what I mean? Like, you have to really plan this stuff out.
Yeah, like, and hey, you know what? I'll even make a statement here. look, aliens out there, Atlas and I, we're clearly very open-minded. If you approach us in public, maybe we'll help you. Just don't kidnap us. You come here. Don't make us go there. Okay?
You can take me. Just don't wipe my memory.
Yeah,
and let me take evidence too. Let me take some evidence.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, fair. Yeah, and let me be your fucking administrator. So I'll be there when you get picked up and when you get dropped off. I need to be there. I'm the witness. And then we can figure this out. You know?
Yeah.
We're not crazy people.
Take me to space.
That doesn't help me.
Take it. Maybe the doctor can show up and help us. All right, so that was episode 19, everybody, of Lore Lords. Episode 20 is next. It could maybe be a big one. I mean, it depends what's happening.
It's going to be
you
what
have a show coming up. Pat West has a show coming up, everybody.
I do have a show coming up,
which is great. If you want to promote that, you can.
It's at a dive bar called the Kibitz Rim in West Hollywood.
Perfect. Love dive bars.
It's great. No, it actually seems like a pretty wholesome place. So I'm fairly excited, except for the fact that I haven't been practicing at all.
So I was just going to propose. I am down and ready to do a third week in a row. If you want to practice your stuff, I have one ready.
That would be nice. That would be actually.
It was the one that Yeti brought up last time, actually.
Oh,
so I have to do the Lake City Quiet Pills. So I have I have notes started for it. I just got to finish notes and write a script, which will take me a couple of days. It's definitely a one that we can get some meat on, but it's not like a ton of meat. So it'll be a pretty good one. It'll be a good for especially for us and you to do some open talking about too. So I'll just put it that way.
All right, fair enough. I do want to talk about my first two-parter that I plan on doing soon, and this can be on the podcast as well. I plan on doing a two-parter on music. That's right. As a music boy, I usually don't. You know me, I'm usually the anime and video game guy, and that's all great and good. But the other big half of me, and I don't really talk about it too much. I've only actually really talked about it once on a podcast so far. My other part of my soul is music related, and so I really would love to go into the different cultures of music. We already kind of know the basics of where it comes from, but I'll be trying to focus on specific parts of like. Our specific histories on what formed into at least music that I personally find very, very love. And again, we know a lot about it, but extend, it's fun to do that. But that might be a big two-parter because, again, that's the history of music goes back as far as humanity itself. So it's obviously a long one. So it would have to be a two-parter as well. And it won't be as mysterious. There won't be alien abductions. It will hopefully just be a really fun, wholesome. And, good. Yeah. Well, I mean, hey. To be fair, people sing about that kind of stuff, and there are a lot of songs that are for appeasement of spiritual elements, not just gods, but also of the earth itself. So, to be fair, people write music all the time for the earth. So, we could get into that a little bit, too, if you want to touch on the spiritual side. I do like that personally, so I could be super down with talking about it. But yeah, that's something I want to get together. But again, the last few weeks have been a little bit long for me. Last, 3, probably, honestly, have been kind of long for me. For reasons that I know a lot of people already know. So I haven't really been focusing on studying anything or really putting my nose to the grindstone. But I'll be able to, hopefully this show is going to kick my ass into gear and then I can get back into a regular groove again. So hopefully.
Yeah, I'm always working on multiple at the same time as well, just because of things like this happening. When I first envisioned this show, I envisioned it being a lot more of me hosting it and you coming in occasionally. So this is kind of like we changed that plan of doing it, But I mean, we can do it that way too. It's fine. I love doing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's nice about this show in general is just a nice wholesome moment about the show is that being called Lore Lords, lore can be involved with generally just about anything.
That's the point.
We can literally talk about anything, and so that gives us a really great chance to, if we don't have I got to admit, on the day I did the Wind Waker episode, I had nothing planned. So I basically just, I literally watched a 45-minute video from start to finish on a Wind Waker thing. And then I played it last year and I was like, okay, I can do this from memory. I did that completely off of the top of my head.
Yeah.
So
for example,
that happens.
Tonight's episode was a 7-page script. Mm-hmm. That's how I do it.
My John Mayer episode had literally follow-alongs. You could listen to music and follow along.
I always do notes and then a script. The one time I didn't do a script is because it was a better better to. Sometimes I don't do it. I should say because it flows better as open bullet
Yes.
conversation than a script.
Yeah.
But
Right.
most of the time,
My timeline stuff had a lot of notes.
Yeah.
Was all the timeline.
It'll be a script next week too, and I'm very excited to talk about what is next week, especially because you have no idea what it is, which makes it fantastic.
I have no idea.
This
what
is
that is.
this is old internet mystery shit.
I'm down with it. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this. The last of the 411s for now, at least. Atlas might want to pick it back up at the end later on, but because they are very interesting.
Yeah,
and
I
there
very well
are
might.
Conveniently,
I very well.
411 of them.
Yeah, maybe in. So also, just to be clear, there is 411 cases as like a reference, but there's a lot more. He never stopped making these. 411 is a direct reference to, hey, what's the 411? It just
Right.
means information. That's what
Yeah,
411
yeah.
Stands for. But the original 4 books had that as kind of a cute little thing. I might even have more because I think but it's just like he's still making them. And
That's
if
awesome.
you want to look more into it, his name is David Paulides, Paulides. He has a YouTube channel where, like I mentioned earlier, he goes to these locations and reads over some of the cases. He reads over notes from experts. He reads over his notes from critics. A lot of people call him a crazy person, and this is all dumb. But
He's not. I don't think so.
I don't think so. I respect the way he writes because he doesn't give a he doesn't be like it's aliens, it's Bigfoot. He never say he just like this is what happened.
Right. Yeah,
Weird, huh?
he doesn't say
Yeah.
he only says the facts, and he doesn't try to put out things that he's not unsure of himself, which is good. So, but yeah, all right. Thank you guys again.
Yeah, thank you everyone. We'll go ahead and end my recording now.